There's some things about this garage that I don't like, and of course nothing is perfect. For example, this wall that juts out, this is part of the foundation and this is the way the house was designed, and I don't like it because it's taking up a significant amount of garage space. If you're parking two cars next to each other, this car is forced to park very close to the other car and doesn't leave a whole lot of space. But this is part of the foundation. I can't really do anything about it, but I can do something about another thing that I don't like, and that's the walls over here, the actual dry walls. The house came with textured drywalls, which I really don't like. If you're in the next town over looking at this garage, okay, maybe it'll look good, but if you're anywhere near or inside of this garage, it looks terrible. And I really want to get rid of that texture. So after talking to my wife about it, we decided to do a little DIY to take down the texture. And while we're at this, we may as well pick the colors that we want. And yes, that's plural, because we are doing an accent wall in this garage. The first step of this process is to sand down the drywall, and I did it by hand. I did some research online and people were saying you can either do it by hand or you can use a machine. And for me, without any prior experience, and by the way, the only painting experience that I had was to do a little touch up here and there, nothing on this scale. So this is gonna be more of like a story of how I did the garage rather than a how-to, because this is my first time doing it, and the more I researched online, the more I found out what I was doing wrong. Step 2 of this process is the skim coating process, and if you look at the pros on YouTube, they make it look super easy. You take some compound, you add some water to it, you mix it around in a certain ratio, then you apply it to the wall in a certain way, you smooth it out, and you're done. Everything's perfect. Well, for them it is, but for someone that's a DIYer like me, we took a couple of tries to learn the process, but it did get a little bit messy, and the mistake I think I made was adding too much water to the mix. So not only does that cause the result to be a little bit too runny, but also I think it caused some shrinkage, because at the end there were some divots along the wall, actually on all the walls, and so we had to go back, sand it, and also apply another layer of skim coat in certain areas. Speaking of sanding, in the first step I talked about hand sanding a lot of things, and I wish I didn't do that. I wish I bought the machine to do that from day one, because it's a lot easier and it's also cleaner, because that machine ties into the shop vac, and that shop vac vacuums up the drywall dust to minimize the dust that's flying around. So if I had to do it over again, I would do that from day one. So after getting everything smoothed out, there was still some divots on the wall. I wasn't expecting this to be perfect, but to prevent me from spending eons fixing all the stuff on the wall, because you know, it's a garage, right? It's gonna be dents and stuff eventually when something hits the wall or scrapes it. Finally, after the skim coating is done, the third step here is to add the primer to the wall. Nothing too crazy over here. We calculated the square footage of the wall that we're trying to paint around here in the garage, and then we determined that we needed 2 gallons, so we purchased 2 gallons of primer and then applied it to the wall. For step 4, we finally get to painting the colors we want. I tried cutting in by hand, but again, the pros do this a lot better than me, and it was faster for me to use the painter's tape for the edges. I applied 2 coats of paint, and there were some imperfections with the painter's tape since I didn't use the caulking trick or anything like that. When you're painting, the hardest spot to paint is this area. I'm going to show you why. When you're trying to paint this wall, especially the upper part, this track gets in the way, right? This is where my head is supposed to be, and if I have the taller ladder, this is where my shoulder is trying to be at, and I'm constantly bumping my head and shoulder into this track over here. And if I'm trying to reach into the corner there, trying not to smear paint all over the ceiling by accident, it's a very awkward spot to paint, because I'm trying to like find the best position not to hit into this track. I'm trying not to like fall off the ladder. So it's just overall, this part, if you're gonna do this by yourself, this I would say would be the most difficult part of the painting process. And here we go. Behind me in this back wall slash accent wall, we have the Buckland blue paint from Benjamin Moore. This is part of their historical collection of colors. And then along the side walls, we have the winter snow white color. So we decided to go with white. We're kind of bouncing back and forth between white and a gray color. And I'm choosing white, and that kind of opens the space up a little bit more given it that it's a brighter color and contrasts pretty nicely with the back wall here. We did choose to use exterior paint all around, so both of these colors are exterior paint. They're low luster paint, so they have the eggshell kind of finish to them. A little bit of shine, as you can probably see, but not like a glossy shine that you would use on like a trim or anything like that. So that will add some moisture resistance, because along this back wall we do have a spigot that this hose is connected to. And then on top of that, since this is the garage and we have all 4 seasons, the exterior paints will generally hold up to temperature fluctuations a little bit better. And this includes the walls here that you see and the walls behind you where the garage doors are. Before we wrap up, let's talk about costs. In terms of what we spent on the supplies, I'm gonna put the numbers here on the screen. And if we compare that to someone professionally coming in and doing this for us, factoring in the square footage of the walls to skim coat and paint, it was coming around out to be $2,000 according to some Google searches. Now, if you guys know of a more accurate way to calculate that, and I'm sure the location and all that factors in, $2,000 was kind of like the number I was getting. And then, but instead, we spent less, and then I also acquired a new skill. I learned a bunch of things from this project. I learned that I hate painting. It was an interesting experience, but I probably wouldn't do it again for a little while. But in the pinch, now I'm more confident in painting, right? Things seem harder than what it actually looks, because if you're good at it, like some of the pros that show you on YouTube, they make it look really easy, right? And then so for me, I gotta take a step back and be like, okay, as someone that's learning, this is gonna take a lot longer, right? And the same thing with scheduling, finding the right weekend to do things. And then, and by the way, if you're doing this over the summer, it is a good thing, even though you're sweating like crazy, because if you're trying to paint in the winter, the paint won't bond to the wall as good as the summer. So I was originally aiming for the spring, but ended up doing this over the summer. But anyway, that's all I got for this video. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.